All right, hello, coffee makers, not coffee takers. He is the master of cyber farms, Alfredo B. Nash Jr., and I, the people's chief, Dr. Joseph J. Bermilla Jr. We are your hosts for the Cyber Coffee Hour. Alfredo Nash and I hail from Mount Vernon, New York, and we are excited to share our experiences and stories along with those of our incredible guests. Our mission is to impart knowledge, enhance understanding, and cultivate a sense of community in the expansive world of cyberspace. So for today's show, we will have a coffee chat with Senior Network Cloud Engineer, Dr. Kristoffer Roberts. Now, Dr. Kristoffer Roberts is a dedicated and accomplished electrical network and cybersecurity engineer with over 20 years of experience in industry and 4 years of teaching experience in academia. Known for being a lifelong learner and mentor to those in the industry, Dr. Roberts has consistently demonstrated expertise in component-level electronics, routing, switching, firewalls, and Linux. Dr. Roberts holds a doctoral degree in information technology and is pursuing a graduate level certificate in artificial intelligence. He has professional affiliations with AFCEA, PMI, and ISC Squared. Dr. Kristoffer Roberts, welcome to the Cyber Coffee Hour.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So I don't know, as we go around the room here, so maybe you want to share with our listeners a bit, just our connection, as how we got along here.
Yeah, I think we were at our second, I think it was our second residency at Capella. We both attended Capella University together for our doctoral degrees.
Yeah.
Awesome school. Didn't want to go to the residencies. We had to do 3 of them, but once I went there, it's like summer camp. You get there and you're like, man, I don't ever want to leave. This is so fun. So yeah, it was good.
It was cool, man. Yeah, and it's great catching up with you again, man. So also too, yeah. But with that said, like, how you been doing since then? It has been a little while.
It has. Actually, I wanted to tell you something too. Now that you mention it, about a month ago, I was teaching for one of the universities I teach for, and I was jumping on a dissertation committee, and so I get an email from one of the dissertation chairhead, and it said Dr. Webb, and I'm like, Dr. Webb, that's not the same James Webb.
Yeah,
it was.
So, it was.
Yeah. So he's like, I talked to him. I was like, hey man, how you been? Like, you're the same. Are you the same James Webb? And he's like, absolutely, I am. And I asked him. I said, you still working on your Jeep? And he's like, yep. He's like, I still been working on that Jeep. He's like, I'm glad you remembered that. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Alfredo, man, how you been doing, sir?
Hey, so far so good. I'm a little on edge being surrounded by doctors.
Just don't have a heart attack.
I pray not. I hope not.
You got the wrong doctors here for that.
So going off of that, I remember your dissertation. So that was pretty cool to see somebody from the class and actually speak to someone from the school as well. So that's pretty cool. Besides me, I just experimented with this mushroom coffee. Like I said, a couple episodes, or the last episode we did. And also I'm cheating on this diet with this caramel cold brew M&Ms. I don't know, they kind of got me on this brand in here.
Oh, wow.
But it's the foolishness we talked about. That's the one I was exploring. And then I'm doing FEMA training side of desk. So I'm doing a little side quest, Fallout style, looking into this FEMA training and different ICS overlap with cyber. So I'll speak to that more in the future. And that's it. Just like you said, it's a slow day with the weather. I'm just trying to hang in there.
Yeah, I hear you. Same. For me, as you mentioned with the weather, dealing with the remnants of Hurricane Helene. So it's for me just been hitting the gym, of course. Still got to do that, but then also getting in my studying, still studying for the CISSP. I want to take it in October, or if anything before the end of the year for sure. So just working on that, and and of course with work, the demands of work, so contending with that. But outside of that, it's been good, just chilling. As I mentioned, I guess part of my chilling, I was watching in the middle of watching that WWE Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix. I'm a big wrestling fan, so those that know. So yeah, so I'm really locked into that.
Is it good? I'm gonna check that out now because I saw the preview when they.
No, it's you know what it is. For one, it goes back to, of course, when he started, and then what really his father started because back then they had wrestling territories, and so his father, Vince McMahon Sr., started out, and then he passed it on to him, and then Vince Jr. He really started expanding and growing it out. So I honestly, I guess from a business standpoint, I always get intrigued in how people get started and some of the things that they had to do in order to. Because we get spoiled. We see the end product of what it is now, but
WrestleMania.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and even with that, they
Right.
they talked about the first WrestleMania, that the money they had to pull out to get the funding for that first one to make it happen. Promoting, you had to get big stars. So Hulk Hogan was his major star at that point in time. So yeah, so when you kind of go see the behind the scenes of how things would work, then it's just very interesting. So I thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, I'm like halfway through. I think it's like 6 episodes. I'm like on 3.
Yeah, I'd say he was. I watched it and I couldn't put it down. And I think he was a real disruptor when he started, because all those territories, they had gentlemen's agreements, and Vince McMahon's dad was like, he's like, people used to go to my dad and say, hey, if he's not careful, he's going to end up at the bottom of a river. And he's like, I don't know what.
Yeah.
So it was like,
yeah,
I'm checking.
They didn't like that.
Yeah, it
That's
was good.
crazy.
It was good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah. So to that, because when he was going to different territories, he was taking their top guys when they visited those different cities, those different territories. Because it, as you mentioned, that gentleman's agreement, you're supposed to really stay within your own territory. But Vince was like, man, I'm going to these other cities, these other territories, and getting their talent. So
And he'd
every
bring
time
him back a couple weeks later.
yeah. So, and that's how he started expanding and really started growing the industry. So, it's pretty cool. I find that I'm locked into that for sure. All right, so Dr. Roberts, again, thank you for being on the show. So let's get started. So, you have over 20 years of experience in the industry and 4 years in academia. How has your perspective on cybersecurity evolved from working in both sectors, and what unique insights can you share from bridging these two worlds?
I think I was going over this question. I was thinking about this question earlier today, and there's a couple things. First of all, I always tell, I was teaching when I was teaching Marines in 2018 to 2020 on networking and IT, and then when I was doing, the 4 years after that, I've been, it's like basketball or football. You can't. I always used to say LeBron James can't give you a class like write a textbook on basketball. He could, but you still have to get out there and practice. And I think that's
Exactly.
kind of one of my main experiences with the cybersecurity field, is that practicing is so important. Because if you go through and you watch the IT Pro TV videos, or you watch the CBT Nuggets, or Pluralsight, and you name it, or you just go get a whole bunch, you start taking the Boson tests and learning that way, you're not really going to grasp it until you actually experience it.
Exactly.
100%.
And I think that's kind of one of the unique insights. And then the other one is kind of avoid the comparison trap. Don't compare yourself to, like Kevin Mitnick or somebody else. Like, it's going to take time. It's going to be a slow process to learn things. But at the end of that, there's a reason why entry-level roles in cybersecurity are so lucrative, because at the end of that, you have, all of those lucrative roles, because a lot of people, they give up while they're in the process of. So that's another thing that I would throw out there as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah.
All right, so that plays well into as a lifelong learner, you're pursuing a graduate artificial intelligence certificate. How do you see AI impacting the future of cybersecurity, and the potential benefits or risks professionals should be aware of?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I think so. I was listening to Mark Cuban a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how every industry, the .com boom, the Industrial Revolution, the different revolutions we've had in the world, you always kind of knew where they were going. People didn't believe that they were going to go that far, but you knew that they were going to end up that way. AI is one of those things that we don't know. I've been, I've been pushing through having some job interviews lately because I'm looking for expanding my horizons a little bit. And somebody asked me, well, why didn't you focus on this certification or this certification? I'm like, I focus on all the certifications because I feel like when OpenAI went public and they pushed out ChatGPT, the game completely changed. Like, I don't know if in 5 years the networking, I don't know if risk assessments, I don't know what's still going to be here. I know there's going to be a human that puts a check in the box for it and says, "Hey, this is what happens," but I just don't know what it's going to look like. And I think AI, I think it's very easy to kind of lean back and say, well, Skynet, Terminator, things like that. But I don't necessarily think that's where it's going. But I also think that it's good to develop critical thinking and strong study skills now, and focus on a couple technologies versus one technology.
I'll take a little comment on that one. I think it is kind of going that route because so my brain, just like you said, was look at all the certifications, look at all the specializations. None of them really, up until like you said, the last 5 or so years, could supplant a different specialization like AI. So when I look at them, and I think in the back of my brain, I think of what was I learned from a book called Wired for War by P.W. Singer. The AI is a revolutionary military affair. It is the leap that we've seen in revolutions, like the musket, right? The cannon, the jet fighter. AI becomes that new weapon system to supplant the last generation of technologies, whether it be network security, risk management, the human in the wheel, right? So you got pen testers. Let's hope, that's not going to do the Skynet analogy. But if it does start pen testing, then we got to step our game up, So I feel like it's not quite there yet, but it is leaning towards that potential track and utilization for sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think with P.W. Singer, I really like him. He did. I read Ghost Ship, and I thought that one was really interesting. And he had mentioned in there that the whole idea is that they have all these old decommissioned ships that aren't attached. They don't have cybersecurity. They don't have electronics. They don't have anything. So you can use them to fight the enemy. And I think that there's a real perception of people seeing the future and saying, this is where we're going with cybersecurity and this and whatnot. But then you have things like there's other avenues that you can explore to kind of find that way. Like, I don't know, I think it was 2017. There's a show, I forget what it's called, something science. I'll have to get it for you, but it's a podcast. And they did a mock-up with Dr. Fauci, right? A mock-up of a worldwide pandemic. And I don't believe it's a conspiracy theory or anything like that, but they're like, it's so weird that we did that before. And even Bill Gates mentioned it in 2009. But nobody would have believed that there would be a pandemic. So yes, AI is one of those things that if you look at it linearly, that it's going to be very dangerous and that's going to be the outcome. But I think there's a lot more. There's other things that can disrupt that along the way.
100%. It might have been Science Friday, but we'll definitely once you get it to us, we'll definitely try to include it in our show notes.
Absolutely.
Right, so that plays good into the next question we have. With your extensive background into component level electronics, routing, switching, and firewalls, what are the most critical vulnerabilities in modern network infrastructure, and how can organizations better protect themselves?
Oh, I think before with the last question, I think answering this question is going to be a little bit of a scary one.
Stacked, right?
Yeah. So, and the reason I say that is because I think it's people. End users, right? Because you can make a computer do a certain thing, and computers only technically do what you tell them to. The way that AI and machine learning functions is that it's a weighted thing. Like queen and woman would be weighted the same way that princess and girl would be weighted inside of the system. But the real maverick, the thing that is that you can't necessarily figure out what's going to happen is that end user. There's a concept, I'm sure you know, Alfred, so cyber IT, where people they go outside, shadow IT, sorry.
Shadow IT.
Yeah. They go outside of things, and instead of sending 100%. You things through there, I send you through Google Docs or whatever, But
Or
yeah, I think
side channel out of band means to get there.
yeah, side channel, right?
Yeah,
Things like
yeah.
that. And so I think that the end user is going to be the main issue. Complacency,
Mm,
poor implementation and followed cyber policies. Uh, I like that there's a risk management framework, and I like that there's NIST and ISO and things like that. But I think that if you use it as a checklist, that's wonderful, but they're vague for a reason, and that you have to kind of dig a little bit deeper when you're going through the process of using those things and assessing things.
100%. So you don't see any potential lower level or embedded attack vectors beyond the humans where, right? Behind people using that particular technology and taking advantage of an embedded component.
I would say with that question, I do because of IoT and Amazon. Not hating on AWS. I'm saying like when you order something on Amazon, you can order pretty much anything. You can order some sort of component or something, but you don't really know if that component followed DevSecOps processes or anything like that. You just know,
right.
and to truth be told, we live in a capitalist world where the drive is to get things out, and if
Right.
someone's not held accountable for a vulnerability, then there's no reason for a company to focus on that vulnerability. So I think Internet of
Right.
Things is definitely one of those things as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So you're affiliated with professional organizations like AFCEA, PMI, and IC Squared. How have these associations, influenced your career, and what advice would you give young professionals about the importance of networking and continuous learning in cybersecurity?
I would say with those organizations, the best advice that I can give is join the organization. With
Mm,
the exception of AFCEA, most organizations don't require you have a certification just to join. So if you're going to go for your PMP, then the first thing you should do is join PMI, right? You should get your study materials, learn things and whatnot, but get your PMI, because there's people that are there that don't even have their PMP yet. And there's a lot of those organizations have their own little side like training where they'll just pretty much just teach people
yeah.
some of those concepts. So don't be afraid and be like, well, I'm not worthy yet, because every single time I've kind of achieved something in my life and said, well, this is where I'll be worthy, and I get there and it's just normal people, right? And it's the same thing
Yeah.
with these organizations. And plus, those organizations really help you with getting you roles and within the industry as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because that goes into the power of networking. You know, I think a lot of people get, or they have it misconstrued that you need to have the requisite skills, and I'm not saying you don't need to. I mean, skills are important, of course, but that's not the only way. That's not the only avenue. Of course, having a network, having people who are in rooms that can speak on your behalf and make it happen for you, make the connections happen. That's a part of the battle as well. So um, that's something I stress even to my mentees is establishing and really widening and broadening your network. Because that'll serve a lot of times. Your network could do a lot of the work for you. Could take could do half the battle for you. So that's an area I would say you can't ignore or neglect, I should say, because that could really serve you well.
And I think there's
100%.
oh, go ahead, you're good.
100%. I was just going to tag on to that too. The other thing I think we've lost in, like you said, 15 to 20 years is that joining our organization gives you a sense of volunteership. They love that. So volunteership,
Mm-hmm.
direct menteeship, someone that's willing to learn while doing, not just the hands-on keyboard stuff, like actually engaging with the organization and showing up and saying, hey, I can help or be helped in an activity. That accelerates. They give bonus points out for this now, but a couple of years ago that was automatically the mandate. Like, show up, get your hands a little dirty, come in and not so much pay the dues, but help us find other learners like you. We want newbies here to show up and represent the organization, and that's how we staff up to teach new skill sets that we didn't know. Because some of these organizations aren't keeping up to date like you and I or those of us on the call. They actually want fresh bodies to come in and volunteer and influence the curriculum.
Yeah, I get that question a lot when I'm doing job interviews. Are your certs? My certs are listed as the dates they expire and everything, but it's always, are your certs still current? And I always say I will never let a certification lapse because I don't want to take the test again with the CEUs now the way they
Right.
are.
That's
So
it.
I think that that's important. And then also, you said about, somebody once told me your network is your net worth, is what they
Mm.
always used to say.
Yeah.
Um, if I had a phone that was developed by Motorola and I said, this is the best phone in the world, it's got the Motorola operating system on it, you'd be like, no, you're crazy. I'm going to use an iPhone or I'm going to use an Android. And the reason is because that has a trusted reputation. So when you speak towards, the person that gets that referral, like, that's power, because people are like, well, Dr. Joseph said, or Alfredo said, that person is good to go. So I don't have to worry about that part. And I think
Right.
that's really powerful.
100%.
Yeah. So as both a practitioner and educator, what skills or knowledge areas do you believe are most crucial for aspiring cybersecurity professionals to focus on in today's rapidly evolving technological landscape?
I would say critical thinking is the most important.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, and kind of moving around. I mean, I think that Alfredo can tell you, Dr. Joseph, you could probably expound upon this as well. The experience that it's never a straight line, right? You're like,
Right.
I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to, quote unquote, like, hack the Pentagon for the whatever cybersecurity program they have going on so I can get a job there, right?
Right.
Legally, because the Pentagon has this little hack. They had a hackathon a while ago.
Yeah.
But it's not like that. It's like, you need to learn how to compromise this network. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to run this command. Well, what does that command do? Well, now you have to know OSPF. Now you have to know TCP. Now you have to know DNS. Now you have to know, side channel
Right.
attacks, things like that. So I think that critical thinking is the most important, but I also think coupling that with persistence and a willing to understand the technologies is extremely important, because there's a lot of times that you drive for that critical thinking and you're on the right path, but you just don't know it because nobody's acknowledging it yet. But as soon as you hit that point where critical mass, where somebody's like, man, you're smart, that's when you'll be able to get that cybersecurity role that you love so much.
100%. I like to expand on that. I think that's called, like, so someone gave me the terminology in a previous job, and it was called running the gauntlet. So people want to see you, pay the dues and not so much struggle, but level up in that journey through lab work. And then once they see you hit that lab or knock out the capture the flags that you mentioned, they're like, we could take a risk on him doing that inside the organization or whoever the candidate may be. And that actually works in your favor with your network. They know you are one of those individuals that will lab up, stay in the lab for a little bit, and then when you get into an organization, you're unstoppable, right? So I agree 100% that running the gauntlet like that, it's not that we lost it, it's just that there's not much direct mentorship to tell folks to do that nowadays.
Yeah, and I think I had a meeting. When was it? We had a cybersecurity fireside chat with some of the Microsoft people probably about 2 months ago, and I posted in the chat. I was like, "This is my chance." So I posted in the chat, "Hey, what do you tell somebody who has a doctorate degree and all these certs? How can I get into the cybersecurity realm in Microsoft over there?" And they were like, "Oh, that's an easy one. Go do Pico CTF, try hack me, hack the box." And I was like, man, like, what? I've got a doctorate degree. I didn't say that, but like,
Right.
it's
Right.
true.
I got to run the gauntlet. Like,
Yeah. Go back to the basics. Like, you have to go back to those basics before, anybody's going to notice you. They're not just going to hand it to you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that I definitely get that, and even with all that, I mean that just ties into work ethic, like overall. I mean, just as Alfredo even alluded to, like going through the different levels, leveling up, and just really be able to demonstrate your skills. For one, and even you, Dr. Roberts, as you mentioned as well, be able to, you're looking at something, having that critical thinking to say, okay, all right, this didn't work. What do I do here? Like to not just approach a problem and then just stop. Like because that could kind of tell. Sometimes you can kind of tell how someone is going to work in your organization and how they approach really how they problem solve. How well do you problem solve? I mean, that's just probably like the most basic core thing. We're not even getting all that technical, because I think it builds from that. I think you when you have that instinctually, that's going to serve you well as you branch out to different areas. Even it doesn't even have to necessarily be even cybersecurity. It could be any career field, honestly. When you have that sort of mindset, that curiosity, you run into something. Okay, what's the next step? Okay, this didn't work. I'm gonna go here. As opposed to someone who gets to it, oh, this doesn't work. Forget it. I'm like, okay, it's still broke. Like, what are you gonna do? You know what I'm saying?
You can only go through I mean, I could teach a machine how to go through a set of steps. Like, that's programming. But what is the human gonna bring to the table that says,
right,
hey, I need to, this. I tried this. I'm gonna not remove that what I tried, and then I'm gonna go try this. And it's just basic troubleshooting. It's the basics. I think is what
right.
the most important thing is. Yeah.
I think what helps with that too, it really quickly, like I've started as a platform gamer. I'm gonna keep saying this until I, eventually don't exist. But the biggest thing that I've noticed as I got from newbie to more experience is that no two organizations were completely built the same. Right. So going back to the critical mindset, labbing up and staying, like, I don't have a whole bunch of certificates. As much as I love education too, I would never knock it. No bachelor's degree, master's, or doctorate could prepare you for the different ontologies that companies have. So that critical thinking that comes in is like, hey, I got to gamify this a little bit. Like, a bank is not always built the same way just because they're in the same sector. Right. And then if you're in cybersecurity and you say, oh, man, I can't really stick with the banks. How do I get into auto? How do I get into agriculture? How do I get into where cybersecurity is still relevant? You're going to have to be a problem solver. You're going to have to be a solution-minded, critical-minded individual. So it comes back, and I'll never knock. I love school. I'll probably be in school for the rest of my life, but I'll never knock the hands-on experience at particular individual organizations, because they're all different. They're all like a degree in themselves, right? And that's people, process, and technology that comes with it.
You bring that up, and I was thinking about, I watched a YouTube video a couple months ago about, it was a Vice expose, and I have a John Deere lawn tractor, so I cut my grass with John Deere. And on there, they're talking about the right to repair and the John Deere controversy, right? And the guy on there, there's a farmer out there, and he's got a laptop connected to this John Deere tractor, and he's like, I have to learn programming, but I can't swap this out, because when you upload it, if you fix it, it doesn't have the right serial number. And I'm like, man, like, that sucks so bad. But then I was thinking, like, what does somebody do when their back is against the wall? They go learn programming. They go to learn different things. And I think that having that hustle as well is very important.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
So we have Dr. Kristoffer Roberts here on the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. As we get ready to transition to the back half of the episode, let's learn a little bit more about Dr. Roberts and some of his interests. So, Dr. Roberts, what are the most significant emerging threats in cybersecurity today, and how should organizations prepare for them?
I would say that, I think the significant threats are artificial intelligence, and then it's so weird, but the loss of doing the basic tasks, like basic cybersecurity hygiene. So you get up here and you're like, man, we got to worry about these 0 days because of AI and these things and whatnot. And then you kind of take your eye off the ball at the basic level. So I think that kind of maintaining both of those. When I did my doctoral dissertation, it was on how to improve, minimize the skills gap within cybersecurity. And I asked somebody once, what do you think the best way to do that would be to make your systems, harden your systems? And the guy was like, honestly, patching. And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean patching? He's like, yeah, it's just simple stuff, man. Just patch. That's it.
You mean the same 1990s to 2000 era is like patching is still a thing. Patching is still a thing for application security specialists as well. That still exists. And it's hard to believe. It's hard to even say that AI still needs that, right?
and test things in production before you push them out. CrowdStrike,
man.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So what was the first piece of technology that sparked your interest in cybersecurity?
Oh, that's a good question. I wouldn't say so much as it was technology. When I was in the Marine Corps, I was communications electronics maintenance guy for about 10 years, and I loved that. But I really wanted to move to information assurance because it seemed like a lot of fun. And what really sparked my drive and my curiosity in that realm was that I went to the school and I failed, right? I made it all the way through, like there were like 6 modules and I failed like module 5. And I even talked to the guy, the head of the school before. I was like, hey, I don't think I'm going to do too well here. He's like, no, you're fine. You've got a 96 in the class. You'll pass. And so I didn't. But what really, that kind of lit that fire, and it kind of pushed me to drive and be myself, to push myself harder. So once I got out of there, I got reclassed to network administration. So Cisco router switches. I went and got my Sec Plus on my own. I went and got my CCNA on my own. I've gotten every single certification I have, I've gotten on my own. And I say that as in the military didn't send me to a class. Some certifications they paid for because they did have some programs. But kind of the thing that drove me the most was failing and then stepping back and saying, what can I do to fix this?
Nice. So failure as a technology was the key.
Yeah, failure as a technology. I like that.
Nice. I do too. So that took care of one of our questions that we had as far as challenges that you overcome. Can we dive into what's your favorite coffee preference?
Favorite coffee. So if we're talking coffee, anything dark roast that comes out of my Keurig. But if we're talking like coffee, then when I go to Starbucks, I get my peppermint white mocha with hot or cold. You know?
That's today.
Yeah.
So is it that? So that's peppermint mocha is it hot, or they don't do that ice, do they?
So I say iced peppermint mocha, and then I say but no ice. So it's basically just it's like a
so that way they can fill up the cup.
Right. That's
don't
cool
get cheap with it.
They used to get mad at that too. They're like, "Well, we can't do that." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And
they can't not put ice in your cup
because they got to maximize the coffee use, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm the customer.
Yeah, my cousin warned me about that too. So it's true. I guess that's a common thing over at Dunkin', huh?
I went to one, and this is a true story. About 10 years ago, I went to a Starbucks in a hospital, and I said, "Can I get an iced tea?" And she said, "We don't have iced tea." I was like, "Well, can you do me a favor?" She goes, "Yep." I was like, "Take that cup over there, put a tea bag in it, some hot water, like halfway, and then if you could just put the rest of it with ice and then mix it up." And she was like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I was
so that's got to be both of them. Both of the chains want to save stock or something.
That's why critical thinking is so important. Like if I ask for an iced tea, you find a way to make iced tea.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna make this happen one way or another. So, if you could have any superpower to help you in cybersecurity, what would it be and why?
Oh man, superpower. I mean, I think it's just persistence and drive, to be honest with you. Like, I know that I don't think there's any shortcut in the world or anything that's better to develop you than having to struggle and hustle through something. So just kind of being persistent. Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Because if you like, if you wanted to be like the heavy, and this was on a show, Fantasy Island, the one they did back in early 2090s, the one they brought back up. But this guy wanted to be a boxer, the heavyweight champion of the world. So he goes to Fantasy Island, and they give him the belt, and he wins. And he's like, "But I'm not happy." And the guy's like, "Yeah, you're not happy because you didn't train for it, you didn't do anything, you just went and we gave you a belt, right?" So it's all about that persistence and that drive and trying to make yourself better.
I think it's the struggle is where you learn. For one, I think you learn more about yourself because sometimes even going into a challenge, we could always talk ourselves out of it before we even get started with something. Because like, oh man, this is too hard. It's too difficult. I don't think I could do it. But as you're going through it, like you said, you're going through that struggle. You're dealing with that adversity. I think for one, you learn something about yourself and see what you're really capable of doing, and then gives you that confidence to say, "Hey, I could do more." At first, I didn't think I could do this, but now I'm doing it, And I think I could take on something else that I wouldn't even think of, because now you have this newfound confidence, and like I said, you're gaining new capabilities and skills, and that's really growth. That's how you're growing, as a basic form as a person, So I think that's a great mentality to have.
100%. I agree. And I like that you picked the boxing analogy, because I feel like the first book I ever read as a young adult was The Contender, right? I don't know if y'all remember that, but I think it's Eric Lipsdale. Hopefully I don't mess up the name. But it talks about that journey that boxers actually have to go through, the conditioning, the, sickness, getting over and willing yourself to be a contender, like a champion. So I feel like most people that do that are often open to collaborate instead of competing. Like the
Yeah.
competition today, it seems like it's a false sense of competition in that you're not the prize fighter. Everyone thinks they come out and they're like you said, going to get the belt and go middleweight, go heavyweight. But cybersecurity is already the heavyweight.
Yeah.
how you gonna get in the ring with an industry that's won multiple fights? So I think 100%. And I heard it when you said it. It's almost like a battle of wills today. A lot of folks need to have that willpower, need to build up that gumption to go out and compete and contend with most of the folks. And then once you get to that just nice level, now you start to see folks that want to work with you and say, oh, how did you do it? How did you get cybersecurity? You got any pointers? Should I run some laps?
Right.
Now they want to do the work that you did. So I 100% agree. That's where the battle of wills come in for sure.
And if you get, willpower, if you get burnt out and you don't have the willpower, it's not uncommon and not unheard of for you to step away and take a week off or take a month off,
Right.
or take a break. Like we were talking about Mr. McMahon, where him and his wife went on that vacation, and he's like,
Yeah.
I got an idea, WrestleMania. And she's like, you didn't
Right.
focus, you didn't take your mind off of wrestling for a second, did you?
Right.
He's like, nope, not really.
Yeah, they were on the vacation and he's still thinking about work.
Yep.
So I have another question in our format here that's pretty cool to us. Are there any interesting hobbies or interests or recreational activities that you partake in enjoying besides cybersecurity?
I would say I used to run a lot when I was in the Marine Corps. I try to exercise to stay generally fit. But most times I like watching a lot of documentaries, and I like learning about different, not just cybersecurity, but just different technologies. Like I understand what capacitance is, inductance, and different lower level components. So I really like to learn about the history about that and how those things function. So anything IT, anything electrical, anything documentary, I just love to learn new things.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think that's a great way, to pick up things, to learning, especially when there are, whether technologies, even certain companies we've heard about, whatever the case is, different stories about individuals. For me, I found documentaries probably one of my more favorite ways to learn about a particular subject or topic, because you get that full background, and maybe it's because of that visual part of it too. Because I love to read as well, but having that that visualization through the documentary, and you're seeing the timeline played in front of you. For me, that's one of my favorite ways of consuming content. Trying to educate, and you're just learning about different things. So
100%. I'm gonna. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna add on to that and say that that's a really good point, and that you said you love to read. The one thing that I wish I could do more is read. I like audiobooks. And I know that's weird coming from somebody who has a doctoral degree, so probably read a whole bunch of stuff, but not everybody is, people are different. So when you get into this industry, or when you find your hobbies, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be engulfed in IT and cybersecurity like I like.
100%. So I'll take it from there too, because I heard a common thing between all of us actually on the call. Documentaries are my first means of learning, right? So if I want to get into landscaping, or if I want to see, I actually have to see the industry show up. And then I go to a conference that might be mentioned in the documentary. So one thing that came to mind while we were talking was I watched the Tetris like docuseries like on Apple TV. And I was like, man, what conferences do they go to promote Tetris? They're still around. The user groups are still around, right? The same thing goes with landscaping. So when I went back to school because I watched a documentary on gardening, and my daughter asked for a fairy garden, right? I turned around and watched the whole documentary on landscaping and gardening, and then it turns into the books that I bought, right? So if you don't enjoy reading, the encouragement is what was the documentary based on? Like think like I like to watch The Road. So I watched The Road like 3 or 4 times, and I had no clue it was based on a book until it was mentioned in one of the anniversary editions on the streaming platform. So I went out and bought that book and saw the differences between the documentary and what was portrayed in the book or what the original script was. Same thing with now Leave the World Behind. So Leave the World Behind, even though it's not a documentary, it was a written work prior to what it became on Netflix. So I like doing that. I like going out, watch the documentary, and then see the industry as it's represented in factual history, and then backtrack to where they got the real references from. Right. So that's how I build up my book collections most of the time is if I don't enjoy a particular topic or I might have difficulty like landscaping, understanding some of the core concepts, I'll hit the documentary first and then go back and find like Doug Tommy books, or whoever's mentioned in the documentary. I love doing that. So, and that helps you get into submersion. That's the word. It helps you with submersion into the topic,
Well, Dr. Roberts, we are very appreciative of your time spent with us today, and just want to, before we wrap up here, if anything you want to share with our listeners before we close out.
Yeah, I mean, I think having the resilience and the power to be persistent. I was trying to clear my backyard, and I told somebody, can you give me a quote to remove all these trees? And the quote that they gave me was astronomical. And I said, well, I'm just going to get myself they call them throw lines. I'm going to get myself a throw line. I didn't know what that was until I did. I didn't know how to cut down trees with a chainsaw until I went and got one. But like, just go out there and try to, learn these. I think that having people trying to learn these things themselves and not necessarily pay for the easy answer is definitely helps them along the way.
100%.
Yes, absolutely. That's great advice. Well, thank you for that. And also thank you to you, those listening and watching, for joining us for another episode of the Cyber Coffee Hour, part of the Alive Podcast Network. If you enjoyed this episode, explore more engaging content in the Alive Podcast Network app. By supporting this podcast and nearly 100 other Black-hosted shows, you can enjoy ad-free listening while contributing to a diverse range of voices in the podcasting space. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more insightful conversations with you in our next episode. So until then, keep brewing those ideas and stay curious about cybersecurity. All right, that's it. It's a wrap. We out of here. Peace.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.